Oh, man. So, y'all, anytime Behind Criminal Minds drops a new video, you know it's going to be a banger, and you know it's time to jump right into it. So, this one sounds crazy. Chris Watts talking about 7 years, almost 7 years since everything went down, but talking about there being like another app, like another secret app. New testimony reveals second secret app. Behind Corona Minds dropped the video a couple days ago. Make sure, I'm telling y'all, make sure, because we're live on TikTok also, make sure, whatever platform you're on, make sure you go subscribe to Behind Criminal Minds on YouTube. It's pinned in the description of this video. And his video is like 1 hour and 45 minutes long. I'm going to chop it into like 2 or 3 parts. But all 3 of them, he's going to be pinned down there. Make sure you go subscribe to him. Awesome channel. Awesome channel. But let's jump into this one, y'all. So what did Chris Watts hide for 7 years? Oh, hell.
Chris Watts was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the quadruple homicide of his entire family nearly 7 years ago. In the years since, the Weld County District Attorney has continued to receive new and credible information concerning Nichol Kessinger's possible involvement. However, despite the ongoing barrage of requests for a full and complete investigation, he has refused them all.
When I say the word prosecutor, what phrase immediately comes to mind? Tough on crime? Aggressive?
Maybe not in Colorado.
Overbearing and rigid in appearance? You ask my wife and she might jump right to arrogant. I'll admit that these stereotypes aren't too far off base.
Rigid and arrogant doesn't even begin to cover it. But for the first time in over half a decade, entirely new evidence has been discovered that has the potential to break this case wide open. Information never previously known or disclosed by law enforcement since the arrest of Chris Watts. On the 6th of November, 2018, Chris Watts formally accepted the prosecution's plea deal, agreeing to a conviction of 5 life sentences. This deal, approved by DA Rourke himself, was finalized just 86 days after the crimes Watts committed on August 13th, 2018. But every single day since Watts' conviction, the true crime community has continued to find glaring mistakes, omissions, and failures that exposes the improper and incomplete investigation conducted by the Weld County District Attorney.
Right? Every time they're like, oh, absolutely nothing to do with it. And everybody's like,
why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying?
What are they talking about? Spiritual Diamond, good to see you. Smitten Kitten, hey, good to see y'all.
Michael Rourke. In today's episode, we will continue with our detailed deep dive analysis of the Chris Watts case, analyzing Watts' first interview and contrasting this new information with shocking details that Watts revealed just 24 hours after he committed his crimes, providing an examination of the discovery records while shedding light on what that evidence actually reveals, helping us all to finally answer the question: could law enforcement have fully and completely investigated this quadruple homicide in just 86 days? This is In Search of the Truth, the Chris Watts Deep Dive series, the 3rd installment.
That does seem crazy as hell. 86 days.
In the last 2 episodes of this deep dive series, we have traversed the rocky landscape of the Watts case surrounding the days and weeks preceding this painful tragedy. We were given a deeply disturbing view of the heartbreak that Shanann was forced to endure at the hands of a man who was seemingly devoid of empathy or concern. Since beginning my analysis of this case, I have continued to receive countless messages from current and former members of law enforcement who all agree that these investigators could not have thoroughly evaluated the facts of this case in less than 3 months' time. But for the first time since the onset of this case, I will be able to definitively demonstrate for you just how inadequate this investigation was. But please remember, Chris Watts will always bear sole responsibility for his own actions. Our analysis will always be about the pursuit of justice. So as we evaluate the facts, we will remember the one and only reason why we continue to advocate for that justice: the victims. So with that said, let's begin. Just after 2 a.m. on the morning of August 14th, Chris and Nichol have just finished their nearly 3-hour-long phone call. The same call that Nichol Kessinger will later claim that she barely recalled what they discussed or talked about. According to the discovery records, at 2:17 a.m., the two would say their final goodbyes, but not before Nichol would eavesdrop on a phone call with law enforcement where Chris was being asked very specific questions about his missing family. And earlier that same morning, Nichol Kessinger made sure to get onto Google and search for the name Shanann Watts. Over the years, we've learned that law enforcement never bothered to ask Nichol why she would be searching for Shanann at that specific point in time. Especially
I wonder why.
In light of the fact that Kessinger would go on to claim that she truly believed that Shanann was okay and simply at a friend's house.
Monday afternoon, he told me that she was like gone and he didn't know where she was. And at that point, I don't think that it's set up.
Don't worry, y'all. I'll hit her with it. I'll hit her. Well, two of them. First, we gotta hit her
That's
with the.
suspicious. That's weird.
And then we gotta hit her with
Why
the.
the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my god. Stop your fucking lying.
You sound crazy, Nichol.
Off any.
Man, this one's gonna piss me off. This lady always pisses me off. Every time I see her face, and she's like, "Oh my god, like what are you talking about?" And then we have to at some point. I know they're gonna play that damn voicemail where she's like, acting crazy.
Alarms in my head just because, I mean, I have friends that I text, and if I don't hear from them for like 3 hours or 6 hours or even like a couple days, I don't feel concerned about where they're at because it's kind of a standard thing for me. But then she didn't come home that night. I was like, okay, well, maybe she'll come back. And I was kind of under the impression, since they're separating, that maybe she decided to take the kids. Maybe she decided to just leave for a few days. I don't know. I was just, I felt like maybe she was just trying to get some space. And I figured maybe that was why she left her stuff there.
Man, you sound crazy.
If Nichol believed that Shanann was unharmed, then why would she be looking for her on Google? By 4:58
damn, probably because she's dumb.
that morning, Sandy Ruschek, the mother of Shanann, called Chris and spoke to him for just over 4 minutes. The two would speak later that same morning at 6:32, and Chris would continue to perpetuate the claim that he did not know where her daughter and his children were, feigning innocence over the monstrosity of what he was still desperately trying to hide. An hour later at 7:26 a.m., Chris messaged
sucks too.
Shanann's friend Sam, continuing the lie that Shanann and the girls were likely safe. He told her, "I'm hoping she's with someone I don't know because I have exhausted all of the people that I know of. I'm optimistic we will reunite again. People have been stopping by from time to time." 2 hours later, and Chris Watts transfers one final nude image of.
Oh, you crazy as hell for that one.
What the fuck?
You sick. Man, that is nuts. By the way, TikTok, hit the follow button if you're new here. And make sure y'all come over to YouTube. Search The Mystery Project. That's the YouTube channel. And you can find the channel. We're live right now, and you can actually see the video we're watching. But y'all hit the follow button over there. The Mystery Project on YouTube. Come on over. And YouTube, do me a favor. Everybody watching, hit the thumbs up for me. Subscribe if you're new. Do the things. We're talking about Chris Watts. Apparently, there's some new evidence, possibly a new investigation, a second hidden app found, and freaking Nichol Kessinger is still incredibly annoying. All right, let's keep going.
His paramour, Nichol Kessinger, into his secret calculator app. At 12:08 p.m., Nichol Kessinger spends 4 entire hours searching the internet, news sites, and articles, all concerning Shanann and the girl's disappearance.
See, that's nuts.
Detective Prill is careful to note that these searches that nearly took her entire workday were all deleted, and he notates this observation in red. It's my experience that when law enforcement...
Why would she delete it if she knew, if she thought that they were just out visiting friends or whatever she said? Why would you delete that? That makes no sense.
...wants to highlight an area of concern, this is exactly how they do it. But just minutes after Nichol had begun her relentless searches for news on Shanann and the girl's disappearance, Chris was communicating with friends and family again at 12:31 p.m. He was continuing to poorly fake the part of an aloof father trying to find his missing family.
Shanann, Bella, Celeste, if you're out there, just come back. Like, if somebody has her, just...
How dare you!
Please bring her back. I need to see everybody. I need to see everybody again. This house is not complete without...
You need to see the inside of an active volcano, you sick son of a...
Anybody here. Please bring her back.
I will simply never understand how or why Chris Watts thought that this interview would convince anyone of anything other than his complete and undeniable guilt. At 1:36 p.m., Chris again texts Shanann's friend Sam. Sam had inquired about the possibility of issuing an Amber Alert for the girls. She was very clearly trying to do whatever she could to find them, and yet Chris could only respond by telling her that an Amber Alert was not applicable in this situation, choosing instead to quickly change the subject while informing Sam that law enforcement had just swept his house with cadaver dogs, ending their dialogue by informing Sam that he had completed all of his interviews with law enforcement in what appeared to be an attempt at trying to insinuate that he was not responsible. Chris again called Shanann's mother, Sandy, at 2:30 p.m. and spoke with her for just over 10 minutes. We would later learn that the Roost-checks were already convinced that Chris was likely involved in the disappearance of Shanann and the girls. And I can only imagine that Chris and his shocking lack of empathy was evident in every word he spoke to everyone he encountered throughout the course of that day. 4 minutes after 3, Chris again communicates with Addie. He informs her that Good Morning America has contacted his sister for an interview. And if I didn't know better, it would seem that Chris is continuing to look for ways to elicit sympathy from his friends and family. But just miles away at exactly 5 p.m., Nichol Kessinger begins a series of seemingly incriminating Google searches that would later be identified by Detective Prill's data report. And by the end of this video, you will understand why this new information directly answers the question that Detective Prill asked nearly 7 years ago. 1 hour later at 6 p.m., Chris's phone notified him of a calendar entry that he labeled as talk. In the days following, law enforcement would determine that Chris had attempted to create a trail of breadcrumbs that he hoped would lead investigators to the false conclusion that Shanann and the girls had simply disappeared. Chris Watts wrongly hoped that they would come to the conclusion that he was nothing more than a loving father trying to locate his family. Just 26 minutes later, and Chris texts his close friend, Nick Thayer.
Nobody fell for that. As soon as we saw those interviews, he's like, I just wish I wish if somebody has them, send them home. Everybody was like, dude, like, stop. Everybody knows that you are responsible now. So just stop.
Letting him know that he would be on his way to his house after he stopped for gas. But while en route to spend the night at the Thayer residence, Watts received a call from the Frederick Police Department. Detective Coder was requesting that Chris come into the office and answer some questions concerning this highly suspicious disappearance of his entire family. Watts would turn around and make his way to the police department in what would become the beginning of the end of his paper-thin story. It's here that Chris would begin his first in-office interview with law enforcement. But this is also my very first time reviewing this footage. And when we conclude our analysis of all the lies that Chris told that day, you will learn something that no one in law enforcement has ever disclosed about this case. Information that is now central to my formal request to the Weld County District Attorney's Office that they finally reopen this investigation and determine the extent of what Chris and Nichol were hiding. Because it's time that we find out the truth once and for all.
Let's go.
By the time that Chris Watts arrived at the Frederick Police Department that evening, law enforcement was already firmly aware that he was their likely primary suspect in the then
that he did it. They were like, man, this dude, everything he says sucks.
Disappearance of his wife and children. Anadarko's Human Resource Department had already informed law enforcement that Watts was communicating regularly with fellow employee Nicole Kessinger. Additionally, they had already obtained detailed phone records and knew that Chris and Nicole were far more than mere co-workers. Detective Graham Coder was tasked with the job of trying to ascertain what Chris had done with his family, but doing so without causing Chris to completely shut down. But one thing is certain, no one could have imagined just how dark this case was about to become.
No hell, right?
I'm sitting next to you, so we're going to look at it together. So what I want to do is, we have a bunch of people coming in, from your neighborhood. Somebody saw something. Somebody knows where these kids are. And I keep saying kids. I'm sorry. You kids, you know. I should say, I work kids quite a bit. And so tonight, if I make one of those mistakes when I say kids instead of your wife and kids, I apologize. We work it a lot, so I apologize if something comes out wrong or, anyway. So, I know you're going through a lot, so I'm not going to keep you here all night. We're going to go through this.
From the moment Detective Coder walks through the door, he is demonstrating the behavior of an investigator who understands the gravity of this moment. He employs the well-known tactic of closing the gap between him and Chris, which subconsciously helps to remove his internal defenses. And in so doing, he ensures that Chris never succeeds in closing off and walking out of that interview room. It's a tactic that will slowly force Chris to do the one thing that he hates to do the most.
Take accountability, confess, be a human. No, he's not a human, he's a monster.
Telling the truth.
So,
telling the truth.
Okay. Let's see, you're 148, you're a detective visitor. What does that mean?
So the doorbell has a camera on it when you get up to a certain proximity, and when you ring it, it detects a visitor.
Okay.
A ring doorbell? You.
Detective Coder just asked Chris about the home security system that detected Shanann's arrival just after midnight on the morning of August 13th. Now, it's very likely that Detective Coder already knows what the security notification meant, but he wants Chris to know the enormity of the information that law enforcement already has. And even more so, he wants to hear the way that Chris answers the question. Now, if you watch closely, you can see that right after he answers him, Detective Coder stands up to close the door, and you can see Chris's body language change right before your eyes. Watts is demonstrating all of the telltale signs of a man who is trapped and very clearly doing everything in his power to hide the truth.
So,
yeah, no joke. Thank you for the super chat. Very sweet. Missed you. I know. I'm back. I'm here. I'm here.
Stuff like this in bank robberies, and when I talk to, a witness of the bank robbery, sometimes I find it best for them to just say, tell me what happened, get it all out, and then once you get it out, let's go over it, okay? So just get it all out as far as this. Tell me exactly what you remember, and I'll take notes about where we can go. Okay.
Did you catch that? Detective Coder has just told Chris that he would like for him to tell the story of what happened in his own words from the beginning. But he equated his past experience as an investigator to interviewing victims of a bank robbery. Law enforcement already knows that Chris and Nichol are likely having an affair based on the records they have alone. And at the same time that we see Chris
based on common sense, based on knowing what 1 + 1 is.
In this hot seat, his mistress Nichol is just miles away speaking with the FBI at a local park, absolutely lying through her teeth.
Oh,
but
hell.
right now, Detective Coder needs to get Chris to tell him his first version of the truth, and he needs to do it before he shuts down the interview and requests a lawyer.
So this 148.
Oh, hell.
Let me switch chairs. Because when they come knocking, I gotta use that key. Do you need more water?
No,
I brought you beer.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Detective Coder has just proven what a skilled interrogator he is, because this important seat change was started right as Chris began telling his first version of events. It's clear that he wants Chris to feel trapped by this positioning, putting himself between Chris and the door. He wants Chris to know that he's not leaving. But more than anything else, Detective Coder, the father and husband, he wants to know what Chris did. He wants to know where to find his family.
So 1:48 a.m., doorbell detects the visitor. So when we were over at the neighbor's house, the next day we were looking at his camera as well, and it didn't show anybody walking up to the driveway, which was kind of weird. That's the only reason I put that on there, because it showed Nichol dropping her off, but nobody actually walking up to the house. It was kind of weird, but she was in the house. Okay.
Listen, I understand that criminals say and do very dumb things sometimes, but it doesn't make any sense to me why Chris thought anything good would come of this stupid lie. He just admitted to Detective Coder that the neighbor's camera never caught Shanann's arrival that morning, which means he knows that law enforcement is aware of the fact that the neighbor's camera also never showed anyone but him leaving that same morning. But I suppose that's why Chris can never seem to maintain eye contact throughout this entire interview, because he knows he's a terrible liar, and absolutely everyone can see it.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my God, stop your fucking lying.
God, this dude is annoying. Chris Watts, you suck.
What are we talking?
This is still 1:48.
Okay.
So, 2 a.m., Shanann gets into bed with me. 4 a.m., that's when my alarm goes off for work, and I just get dressed, brush my teeth, everything I do upstairs.
Okay.
4:15, that's when I get back, slide right into bed next to her, and start having a conversation with her about having the house up for sale, and talking about it, like actually proceeding with the separation.
Okay.
And obviously it gets pretty emotional, like we're talking about, like we felt the disconnection was there, like falling out of love, and trying to stay together, maybe just for the kids' sake, but we're realizing that doing like our homework, it's not, most of the time that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Now, for many of us who have taken the time to study this case, all of this is very familiar. We know that this is the first series of lies that Chris will tell law enforcement, and that eventually he will alter his story more than a few times. But it's at this point of the interview that I realized something. Chris's story is surprisingly very detailed, and as we know, very fabricated. And from everything we know about Chris, it's clear that throughout his upbringing and his marriage, that he was the kind of person who followed the strong women in his life. In his early years, that was his mother. Then it was Shanann, but right here, right now, it's Nichol Kessinger. And I just can't help but notice how rehearsed, specific, and detailed this lie is. And I promise you, that will become very important in the very near future.
And it gets pretty rough because we have 2 beautiful kids and we have 1 on the way. So it's just a matter of it was very emotional. We were both crying, and at the end, we just said, she said she was going to take the kids to her friend's house for the day, and she would be back. Okay. I said, okay.
Listen, we all know that Chris Watts is capable of concocting lies with relative ease. but it's hard not to notice just
terrible.
how calm he is right now. Because remember, it's only been about 24 hours since Chris committed what is easily one of the most grisly and heinous crimes anyone could ever commit.
Yeah,
Now,
literally.
Over the years, we've learned that in the hours following his crimes, he felt a sense of relief that he was
God, he's a sicko. Jamie, thank you for the super chat. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys.
now happy
So
because
sweet.
he could finally be with Nichol Kessinger. So then I can't help but ask the question, why would he be so confident in such
And Nichol Kessinger, she's not even worth driving 30 minutes out of town for, much less taking the lives of your entire family, you dumbass.
obvious lies? It's almost as though Chris had reason to believe that this poorly planned deceit
Nichol Kessinger is not even worth opening your front door. I'm good. I'm going to take a nap, you sicko.
had cause. And because of new information, we now know that Chris was communicating with Nichol through a second secret app that they clearly both believed that law enforcement would never find. And it really seems that Chris believed that Nichol was waiting for him on the other side. And until law enforcement subpoenas those records, we cannot know with certainty what Chris and Nichol said. But it sure seems like his words were carefully planned with the singular intent of being with Nichol. And ultimately, to do whatever it took to get away with murder.
Oh, God.
And so I went downstairs.
Nope.
Made my protein shake.
Spoiler.
5 a.m. That's when I did that. I had my lunchbox, had my oatmeal, chicken, took my water jug up. 5:15, I went outside, back my truck up, was loaded up. Had my book bag, my lunchbox, computer, water jug, my big clear container. I put big clear containers in my truck so it's easy just to pull out, pull in, just depending on what I'm going to use. My O-ring kit, and I knew I was going to do some stuffing box rubbers that day, so I got some various open wrenches from my toolbox. I know those work better than the ones they would give me. Okay. 5:30, that's when I went to work. Okay. And I hadn't heard from Shanann for about 2 hours there, so at 7:40 I texted her and asked her if she could tell me where the kids were if she took them anywhere. Okay. Nothing. Okay.
What we just heard was Chris describing the morning of August 13th, 2018. You remember the exact same time that Nichol Kessinger's phone just happened to ping from the cell tower directly next to the Watts' home?
Yup.
And everything that he is saying seems so much worse when you know what he was actually doing that morning and the lengths that he had gone to completely annihilate every good thing that he had ever been entrusted with.
At 12, I texted her again, called me. Nothing. And then about 12:10 p.m., that's when my doorbell visitor, not visitor, and I was like, hey, it popped up on my phone, and it says it was Nichol. And I was trying to put it on my phone to see if, she's just trying to get in or whatnot. And I hear her, she's on the phone I could hear her on through my phone saying she's trying to get to Shanann, so that's when I called her. Yeah, I called her at 12:20, see what was going on. She told me that Shanann hadn't responded to any of her calls all day, or any of her friends' calls all day. Okay. And that's very strange, just because, I mean, if she's getting back to me, that's fine. You know, she gets busy with the kids, whatever. And so if she's getting back to her people, the people, she works with direct sales. Okay. So if she's getting back with them, that's strange. Is she the type to answer the phone? For them, yeah, it's all the time. Okay. Yeah. For me, it's just hey, wait, I'll see you later. Okay.
It's been said so many times throughout the history of this case, but Nichol Atkinson is the reason why Shanann and the girls were found so quickly. If she hadn't been as aggressive, forcing Chris to come home that afternoon, this case may not have had the same conclusion. But it's here, only minutes into the first formal interview with Chris Watts, that I want to remind you of why we continue to discuss this case. Because in just 85 days from the date of this interview, this case and all outstanding investigatory leads will be closed by District Attorney Michael Rourke's office. The same man who from the onset of this case has told the general public in so many words that the conviction of Chris Watts outweighed the importance of completing their investigation, holding everyone involved accountable.
How dare you!
Just saying that out loud, it seems like it's just so ridiculous.
And obtaining justice.
So about 12:40, a few more efforts from Nichol to reach her while she's there, like outside the house. Mm-hmm. And at 1 o'clock, that's when I left, and I was like, all right, I'm on my way down there. 2 o'clock when I got home, because they couldn't get in because the front door had a top latch to keep the kids in. Nichol and the police officers out there. Right. Okay, gotcha. So they couldn't get in because top latch on the front door was hinged, and the key pad on the outside does not work to get in the garage. So they had to wait till I got there so I can get the remote opened. Okay.
And this is why I am a vocal supporter of Nichol Atkinson. Chris Watts was caught far earlier than his plan had accounted for. Originally, he was hoping that he would have enough time to go to work, leave at a normal time, all while sending messages faking his concern for Shanann. He needed time to get home, move her car, her phone, and all of the crime scene evidence to get it as far away from his house as possible. That's why it's so critical that Chris was interrupted before he could get home and dispose of Shanann's belongings. And it's why his story didn't make any sense in light of the evidence, because the only logical explanation for why Shanann and the girls were never seen leaving the Watts home on camera is because they left in his truck, and that Chris truly is the monster that everyone believes him to be.
So when I got home, I opened the garage door and we went inside the house and looked everywhere. Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, nowhere to be found. Shannon's wedding ring's on her nightstand, her phone's still on the couch, her purse is still there, the medicine for the kids is still there, the car and the car seat's still there, and there's no sign of them anywhere.
Okay, does anyone else notice that Chris is reading from a document? That would mean that in a span of just over 24 hours, Chris created a detailed outline of the prior day's events. Put that in perspective for just a minute. Chris,
that is nuts,
was not known to do things like this. He wasn't a highly organized person who was also incredibly meticulous about dates, times, and events. Well, wouldn't you know it, there was someone in his life who happened to be very detailed about dates, times, and events. And if you turn to page 942 of the Watts Discovery, you'll find this exceptionally detailed outline that came from none other than Nichol Kessinger herself. In fact, it's so detailed, it provides a near forensic level recollection of the day-to-day events concerning Nichol's supposedly short acquaintance with Chris Watts.
That's suspicious.
You know, I just think it's
weird.
very interesting that Chris is reading from a surprisingly similar document that outlines the events of the day prior in virtually the exact same way that Nichol Kessinger does just weeks later. And if you're the kind of person who sees this Everest-sized mountain of suspicious behavior from Nichol as nothing more than mere coincidence, then good news, I have some property to sell you. Okay, I'm not going to say it, but my point still stands because at some point, law enforcement needs to be honest with the monumental mistakes they made on this case, and you're about to see why.
It's Colorado, though.
You what?
You know what I mean? Like, they're crazy.
3 o'clock, the police officer, detective, Howard, right? Oh, yes. Okay. Butcher's name every time. And asking Nichol and I, questions about where she could have gone or who she could be with. At about 4 o'clock, the police officer's out there. He was checking the neighbor security footage. At 5 p.m., the same police officer, detective, and then sergeant, another officer, they showed up and they searched the house again. About 6 o'clock, they didn't call around to anyone that may know something, called hospitals and hotels. 7:30, my friend Nick and Men showed up to show support, and then on his friends showing up. Shows Lauren, Dave, Jeremy, and 10 o'clock, pretty much about laid down, but I didn't go to bed till probably like 2 a.m. just because fielding texts and calls all night.
Okay.
Because of the guilt you felt for being a loser. Oh my God. TikTok. Y'all come over to YouTube. TikTok's getting mad at me. So y'all, The Mystery Project on YouTube. The Mystery Project. Y'all come over right now. A little bit left on this one. See you guys over there. TikTok's always crazy. All right, let's keep going. YouTube, hit that thumbs up too. Let's get 50 likes.
Yeah. I was just hoping that, I left all the lights on in the house. I was hoping that I'd get a knock on the door. But yeah, nothing. Yeah, but nothing happened.
Do you know what absolutely blows my mind about this case? It has been nearly 7 years since Chris committed this crime. And in all that time, he has never once attempted to sincerely apologize for what he did. In fact, he's done
a piece of garbage.
Just the exact opposite. He's forced friends, family members, and acquaintances to live with this endless black hole of suffering because he simply refuses to just tell the truth. He co-opted people who loved him in an attempt to gain their sympathy, and now, once again, he's changed his story to put the blame on anyone other than himself. And one of the worst elements of this case is that because he lied so much and so often that even if he does decide to tell the truth someday, law enforcement won't even believe him. But I suppose that's why so many of us still see this case as incomplete, because the truth deserves to have its day, even if Chris refuses to participate in making it a reality.
What do you think happened?
At first, I really thought maybe she was just at somebody's house, just decompressing. Yeah. But after today, like with the onslaught of all the cars, all the police cars, all the news, all the canine units, it's making me lean the other direction about someone took her. Okay. But it's just, if someone took her, it would have to have been someone she knew.
Yeah, you dumbass.
Because there's no sign of anything like being disturbed, broken. But
I just want this detective to be like, yeah, and it was you, and we know it's you. So shut up, stop all this dumbass, stupid shit, and just fess up.
Like that's the way I'm leaning now. At first, I thought for real she was just decompressing somewhere. I thought she was safe, even though everything in the house was left there. But now it's just after the day with the news crews and everything, it feels more the other direction, and it's freaking me out because I have no idea where they are.
Why the fuck you
Since I began
lying?
this channel, I have spent countless hours researching every nook and cranny of this case. I have learned about Chris's upbringing, the way he carried himself with his friends, his parents, but especially around Shanann. Now, it's obvious that Chris Watts was a terrible liar and incredibly self-deluded, a man incapable of seeing the forest for the trees. But in the months following his conviction, law enforcement was so baffled by his crime that they conducted a follow-up interview at his prison in an effort to try to understand why he would do this. Law enforcement has admitted that Chris Watts did not fit any of their current or existing offender profiles. And every single time that I hear him speak, all I hear are the words of a man who I believe was so clearly influenced into committing this crime. And that's why I will never understand why D.A. Rourke refuses to admit his clear failures and finally properly investigate this crime to fix what they so clearly broke.
Yeah, because you said it. The dude, the DA or whatever, he's got an ego. And he would have to admit that he did something wrong before you know what I mean? Like he'd have to do that. And his ego's like, no, hell no. I ain't trying to say shit.
If you could think of anything that we could do to find him, what would it be?
Get him to confess.
I mean, everything that I've exhausted so far is like people that have car seats because she left the car seats. And she was never just, Bella could sit in a regular booster chair that because she did about that. time. Celeste isn't quite there yet, but all the people that I know that have cards, I mean, they've contacted me. I mean, unless it's, I mean, there's definitely a chance it's somebody I don't know. Being a guy or a girl, I mean, and she has plenty of friends through like direct sales that I've never met. That could have a kid that they come and just say, hey, you know, let's go. Like, just back up in the back, put them in, let's go.
Did you just hear that? Chris just said something that I now
he said back him up, put him in the back, and let's go. He told on himself.
believe is a critical part of this case. He just said, and she has plenty of friends through direct sales that I have never met. They could have a kid and they could have come and said, hey, let's go. And they back up to the back of the house, put them in and go. Chris is telling law enforcement that there is another way in and out of his house other than the front door and garage. He's giving law enforcement key information that they seemingly missed over and over again. It's evident in the way that he describes the situation that he wants them to know that there is an alternate route into his house through Verbena Court, this road here that goes directly up to their tiny backyard fence that absolutely anyone could have easily traversed. You know, kind of like an obsessive mistress whose phone just happened to ping from Frederick that morning. So it starts to make a lot more sense why Chris is now telling law enforcement how Shanann could have disappeared, because that very well may have been how Nichol Kessinger disappeared that morning.
And this is like, that's what's driving me nuts.
Like,
like, if she's out there, like, just come home. Like, if someone has her, or like not just has her, but she's at somebody's house and she's just decompressing, it's time to come back. But now this is real. Okay. This has gone to a different level.
Absolutely. Okay. Do you have an inkling of if it's good or bad?
Yes, I would have thought that she was safe and it was good. That she would come home and say, hey, it's more on the other side. I don't think that she would let it get this far if she was just decompressing somewhere. I mean, she's not talking to anybody. As far as, I mean, people that have reached out to me that I have talked to in like a year that are friends with her.
Man, this dude sucks. Well, that's part one. Y'all, part two tomorrow, 9 p.m. And if you're watching this, weeks from now, just click on the video on the page. Make sure you like it, though. Like this video right now. Subscribe. I'll see y'all on the next one.